Hello and welcome along to the UCAS International Podcast with me, Robbie James, and on today's episode we are talking about life after graduating. So the various pathway options available, things like internships, visas as well, we're going to discuss over the course of the next 15 minutes or so. And I am delighted to say that joining me for this podcast, we have Noeleen Hammond-Jones, of course, the co-chair of the UCAS International Task Group, and of course, the deputy head of the career service at Lancaster University Management School. Take a deep breath. We also have Rob Young with us as well, Advice and Training Officer. It's good to see you both. Plenty to get stuck into. Let's start, though, by learning a little bit more about both of you. So, Noeleen, maybe we start with you. Tell us about what your various roles, consume.
So I'll start off with, I'm co-chair of the International Task Group for the Association of Graduate Careers Advisory Service, which is the professional body for careers professionals in higher education. And I've been doing that for a number of years. And in addition to that, I'm the deputy head of careers at Lancaster University Management School. I've worked in careers and employability now for about 15 years, and I specialise in international employability.
And Rob, as for you?
Yeah, so as you said, I'm an Advice and Training Officer at UCAS, which is the UK Council for International Student Affairs. So I can bring out the long acronyms and things too. We're a national advisory body, and we look after the rights of international students in the UK. And that ranges from things like immigration, so visas, which we'll talk about, fee legislation, life in the UK, lots of things, strings to our bow.
Let's begin then. Right at the start, in terms of when you start thinking about what your pathway is going to, I suppose, what ingredients are going to make up life after graduating. Rob, when should you ideally start thinking about it?
Yeah, so I think it depends on the kind of course that you're studying. I think if you're studying something like a 3-year undergraduate program, then I think you can afford to think about this as early as you want, realistically. And I think it really depends on what it is you want to think about. If you need something like a visa to continue, then the sooner you start planning for that, the better. If it's just that you are thinking about work and what kind of jobs you might want to do, then you've maybe got a bit more time, but Noeleen might disagree with me there. I think from a careers point of view, it's never too early. I think from an immigration point of view, I think you do need to be aware of your options as soon as is possible as well, because everything tends to change quite rapidly over the years as we go through. It's really important to stay, aware of what is happening in the world of politics, in the world of immigration changes. I think if you're on something like a 1-year master's, it's pretty much as soon as you arrive in the UK. I think that thought process needs to happen straight away. Potentially even, as you're arriving in the country, it's good to start having that mindset. Where is this going to take me? What are my plans? And obviously, if you're something like a PhD student, you probably have some intention anyway. A PhD, for example, is a very big investment anyway. So I think professionally, you're probably more likely to have an idea. But really, no time is too early, to be quite honest with you. But when and what issues arise may influence that decision.
You're nodding away there, Noeleen. You agree?
Yeah, no, I think with careers, I say it to my students all the time. As soon as you have chosen your degrees, when you really need to start thinking about it, and it doesn't have to be that specific career in a specific sector with a specific company, but having an idea of what you do and don't like about the world of work, talking to relatives, trying to get experience for when you're coming to university. So whether it's a part-time job or volunteering before you start university, and then engaging in the student community to inform as much as possible what you like about the world of work. And then you can start making decisions. I think if you leave it too late, you're putting yourself in a real difficult situation. It's a competitive market. And the more you experience, the more options you'll also open yourself up to as well at university. So university is a really safe space to experience new opportunities, new sectors, to talk to alumni, to talk to academics, to talk to your career service, to gain a bigger picture of what is available out there. And then try and get involved as much as you can.
And that's the thing. The last thing we want it to fill for people is really overwhelming, right? And that is where support is so crucial, because you mentioned it there, Rob, and I hadn't really thought about it. You do need to be watching the news and having an idea of what's going on internationally in terms of policy and law and things that it's worth saying that even things that we say today, they're always changing. So it's really important, I imagine, to reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the sad reality, well, it's maybe not a sad reality, but the reality for international students is that, what is happening in the UK culturally and politically will have a direct impact on your future and the potential options that you have. So it is kind of another layer of being an international student in the UK that a lot of people don't always see that international students need to spend a lot of time doing. But, there are people here to help you with that. And I think that's the key thing. Obviously, we at UCAS are here for that. People like Noeleen and her teams are there for you for that. But even UK-based students, home students are there for that too. I think it's a question of kind of adaptation and really engaging with the culture in the UK, engaging with the university and engaging with your education. You'll pick things up naturally from your peers, but also there are plenty of people out there to support you in making that determination of how to proceed through your journey. But yeah, it's another layer to think about being a student in the UK.
Can you just give us like a example of like, I don't know, something that might happen in terms of international law or big changes that are happening in the world at the moment? How might that, me as a student, how might that affect me?
I mean, it's happening all the time. So, a good example is if something changes in any country worldwide, it's going to have knock-on impacts across other countries. So, there is an election in the United States. An outcome of that may influence how the rest of the world approaches certain things. So geopolitics nowadays, the world is very small, right? It's a very small world. And realistically, unfortunately, students can't always afford to kind of not be attuned to these things. So it can be something very small. It can be something quite seismic. Really, it doesn't matter. It's just that plenty of things have a demonstrable impact on your time here in the UK. And immigration law in particular can be very volatile. It changes very frequently. It changes with each government. It changes with pathways things that happen through the year, even within the year. So really, it's just being on your toes and being prepared for these things, really.
Shall we get a little technical and dive into our friend visa chat? Shall we go straight in?
Why not?
Let's very excited.
It is exciting, and there is a lot to think about when it comes to visas. For an idiot like me to understand, Noeleen, how would you break down what may be available to students?
Well, I'm going to look at Rob being the visa from a careers perspective. So when we're talking to students before they arrive, and when they arrive, research is absolutely key to everything that you do in your career. So that includes understanding what your visa options are, because that helps you to figure out the world of work. So for instance, I wouldn't be going for a career in a specific sector if it wasn't a career shortage in the UK. So if you're competing against a home market that is saturated, there is no point spending your money on that kind of a career. So that's where I think, Rob, when you do your research, understand where the skill shortages are, the occupational shortages, but also what visas are available. So you'll come here on your student visa. One of the options is the graduate route visa. What I advise students to use that route is a safety net. So if you're not planning to stay in the UK and you're looking to gain experience, fantastic. You can do quite a number of different things on that route. So explore, work for employers, try different sectors, try different opportunities. If you are looking to stay in the UK, that's where it's your safety net. So that is your precursor to potentially a skilled worker visa, which you would need sponsorship from an employer to be able to avail of. There are salary levels that you need to achieve in order to be eligible for the visa. There are other little nuances as well around the skilled worker visa. But essentially, as long as you do your research and you know what the salary levels are, you know that the employer's on the sponsor register and they have a license to sponsor, then you find somebody who you can apply to and be a worker with them. So that's your two. There are lots of other visa options if you want to start your own company, etc. But the two main routes after graduation tend to be the graduate route and the skilled worker route.
And they're,
that's nailed that. Well, thunder well and truly stolen. But yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Is there a sort of a pros and cons list you could come up with there, Rob?
I think, in terms of pros and cons, that's a really good point. the graduate route, thinking about it as a safety net is a really nice way of thinking about it. It does give you some flexibility.
Yep.
It allows you to do lots of things that pretty much every immigration route doesn't allow you to do. And it kind of gives you a lot more freedom to test things out,
Yep.
try different sectors like Noeleen said. And that's a really great thing for that route. What it doesn't do, though, is it doesn't give you that long-term future. It doesn't give you that sort of 3, 5, 10-year plan. It's a limited visa. It will expire, and then you have to move on. You can't renew it. You can only ever have it once as well. So when we talk about forward planning, if the graduate route comes into your planning, but you're not sure between that and future study, you do need to consider that. Because if you take the graduate route, you use it for a month and then go back to study, that's it. You've used it. It's gone. So it's a one-off shot, but it is very valuable. It's a very powerful route. It offers a lot of flexibility. Family is a bit tricky. So having dependents on the graduate route is quite a difficult thing. They need to have already been your family members in the UK as a student, which in of itself is also quite difficult now. So it's another thing to think about. You know, if long-term employment or bringing family and settling in the UK is your plan, the graduate route isn't the solution to that. It's part of the solution potentially, but is not the full solution. Something like the skilled worker route then starts branching out further. You know, the skilled worker route is probably, when you think about work visas, it's the work visa people want. It's probably the one that people see as the most valuable. It can go up to 5 years at a time. It has a built-in settlement route within it. So it is a very valuable route. But as Noeleen says, there are salary thresholds to meet. There are lots of requirements. It's an incredibly nuanced visa. And I think it's not always appreciated for actually how complicated it can get. And there are a lot of things that people need to consider, and not everywhere sponsors. Much like a student visa, there's lots of things you need to meet. Financial requirements, job requirements, salary requirements. There's a lot of hoops to jump through. But the payoff is very high. You know, it can be a 5-year visa. You're working for a company. You know, you're relatively secure as long as you don't lose that job or that something happens to the company. It can be renewed. You can have family on it. So it is a route that has a lot more kind of promise for those looking for that longer term solution. But there are other routes. You know, there are other options out there. They are kind of the two that probably the most common. We see international students progressing typically from student route normally to the graduate route first, but not always, which we'll touch on in a moment, why things like internships and work placements can be so valuable. Where we don't see that and we go straight from student to skilled workers more often than not, where there has been some employment related to the student period as a student. But we'll touch on that in a moment, I'm sure. But there are lots of other routes. There are other ways of getting immigration options to remain in the UK, but they don't always involve working for a company, for example. There's a bit more variation there.
So, Rob, you mentioned dependents there. Can an undergraduate have dependents on a visa?
That's a really good question, and it's a really technical answer that probably isn't the right time for it. Typically, no, but there are sort of very niche circumstances, and dependence is one of those areas which can get really awkward and quite complicated. I think if someone is thinking about that or is planning for that, the best thing to do, either call us and check our website for information, or be to consult an immigration solicitor or a lawyer who's registered with the Immigration Advice Authority who can give you direct advice, because, it's a bit of a tricky area to navigate.
I mean, it's great that there are so many options, but naturally, lots of options also means a lot of things to think about and a lot of things to factor in. That is why I assume the University Careers Office is so important, to seek help and have someone to break it down and actually maybe try and personalize what might be best for you.
Yeah, and we can guide students. We use the UCAS website all the time, and we guide students to the resources that are there. We're not visa or immigration specialists, so we're more of a signposting when it comes to visas, but we can certainly talk to students around the options that are there. And if they, we encourage them as well to sign up to alerts alerts to the government website, the Home Office alerts as well. So if there are any upcoming changes, that they're aware of those changes. But the more research they do, the more empowered they are to have those confident conversations with employers. And as well to navigate being able to sell in their own abilities with employers. So the graduate route, another use of the graduate route is almost a try before you buy scenario. And I know that sounds really simple, but it's a way for employers to see your value add, your fit in the organization, what you're bringing to the organization before they go down the route of the skilled worker with you. So that's also a really good use of the graduate route. And many students do go on to the graduate route to work with a specific employer with the hope of switching then into the skilled worker route.
And we mentioned the sort of salary, what do we call them? Sort of salary expectations or thresholds.
Technically, is probably the best way of thinking about it.
Yeah, and I guess they will, correct me if I'm wrong, probably am. Do they go hand in hand with sort of industries and careers that are high in demand? And if so, which are those industries?
Yes and no. So it would be great if we could simplify it to be that simple. It would make everyone's life.
I was just trying.
I
just thought I'd give it a go.
It would make it so much
sense.
easier. So the skilled worker route has sort of various routes within it, if you like, various options within it. And without going into sort of too much heavy detail, because the other sort of technical side I'll put on this is it's a route we don't actively advise on. We provide some information on our website for students, but because it is a heavily regulated area, immigration advice, we kind of get to a point and kind of say that's where we leave you. But really, the skilled worker route is built up of around sort of 6 to 8 plus different options for salary thresholds. There are some which are discounted from the main rate. So you've kind of got this top end rate, which people need to achieve. And then if you're going from, say, a student visa or a graduate route visa within a certain time frame, you get a discounted entry point, so a lower salary point. There are also certain fields like STEM subjects. If the job relates to STEM,
and what are they? What does that stand for?
Science, technology, engineering, and manufacturing. Maths.
Oh my word!
Maths.
Rob's poor face when I suddenly asked him.
I had that moment of going.
It's another acronym, isn't it?
It's just too many. There's too many acronyms. I was close though.
You were.
It's basically science and technology.
Yeah.
Really.
Okay. Fine.
And that has a discounted entry point as well. Likewise, I think there's some for teaching, and there is something else called the immigration salary list, which is a separate thing. Which is job roles in need, essentially, where that is also a discounted entry point.
Yeah.
So, yes, in answer to your question, if we want to sort of boil it down to its most simple form, yes, there are benefits if you're looking at something which is perhaps a more in-demand career, but it's not quite as simple as just saying all job roles in this sector will have some benefit attached. There's a bit more nuance to it than that. But yes, there are options available if you're looking at sort of making a career path in something a bit more in need in the UK.
Would you go along with that?
Yeah. I mean, it comes into the planning. So if you're planning on moving to another country, you need to do some research. You need to understand what are the main industries, who are the main employers, who is on the sponsor register, who is likely to sponsor. So look at the likes of LinkedIn, see who their employees are, see who the alumni from your institution are, and have conversations before you come. Reach out to alumni of the institution you're planning to come to, have those conversations so that when you arrive, you're prepared to start, especially for master's students, but for undergraduate students, engage and build up the experience and knowledge so you can be competitive. But it is about having that knowledge, and the more you know, the more confident you are to have that conversation, because not all employers know the visa situation either. You would assume an employer, even the big international firms, would have all the information, and they don't. Unless you're speaking directly to their immigration team within their HR, who are not the ones on the ground recruiting. That's their recruiting teams. So the more you know, the better position you're going to be in. And using the right terminology, the right names for the visas, because we a lot of people switch in and out of the old names for different routes that used to be in existence, which I know is probably a bugbear because it's a bugbear of mine.
A little bit, yes.
But yeah,
it's fine though. I understand. I get it. I do understand.
I think it's important for you to have that information so that you can, I wouldn't plan to move to the other side of the world if I didn't know what my options were. And you have to think about it in the long term. If it's just to gain some experience, great. Make the most of it. There are the graduate route is there for you. But if it's a longer term, then you need to put the time in and do the research.
Well, go on, Rob. Are you gonna?
Yeah, I was just going to say, and just to backtrack actually on something that you mentioned, which when you brought up pros and cons as well, the just sort of break down a bit of terminology in case anyone watching or listening doesn't quite understand the terms like sponsor register and things like that. The skilled worker route is much the same as a student route. With your student visa, you require a place at a university. The university is your sponsor, and you get a CAS, a certificate of acceptance for studies, and you use that in your application, and you are essentially attached to that university. It's exactly the same, really, with skilled worker routes. You are sponsored by your employer, you're attached to that employer, and you must work for that employer. The graduate route doesn't have that. It's a non-sponsored route. So that when we're talking about the flexibility with the graduate route compared, say, to some of the other routes, that lack of sponsorship is a big deal. And with the skilled worker route, there is a list of people, companies that sponsor under the skilled worker route that's available, publicly available. It's enormous and not overly helpful.
Why am I not surprised?
Yeah, it's not overly helpful in of itself. It's a tool. It's more of a tool as a cross-comparative tool. If you're looking at something and you think, I'd love to work for them, and you see they're on the list, it's a helpful tool to know you've possibly got an in there, but it's not helpful in of itself on its own. It's just a means to an end, if you like. But again, this is where, when we're talking about planning and thinking about your options, sponsorship and being under sponsorship is a big responsibility. It's a big thing. There are a lot of conditions placed upon you when you have that. So if that's not something you want, it's another thing to think about when you're considering your future plans.
Well, all of this is, and how can parents maybe listening and watching this, how can they sort of play their part? Because there is a lot for their sons, daughters to break down.
I think it's encouraging your kids to engage with the services at the universities that they're coming to,
and engaging with them themselves. Can the parents get involved sometimes, or do their research
in the lead up to it? I mean, once the student starts university, there is privacy there for those students, but there certainly is an option for parents, especially in recruitment events, open days, to ask the questions of the specialists of the university, what they can do. So things like engaging with the visa team, they will support the student through the whole student visa process, or any changes that need to be made, or any questions students have about student visas. There is a specialist team there within each and every university to help those students do that. Then you've got your student support teams, but then you've also got your careers teams. So I would say for a lot of these students, encourage your students to come to the career service to have these conversations, even if it's, I don't know what I want to do. Start the conversation, and we can then help you to get some tools and have some conversations to give you a little bit of focus or direction in what you want to do or what experience you can gain in the process. But it is about research. It's, if you're going to come to another country, you need to know. Don't be going off, our best friend's son came in 2015 and this was his process, so that's your process, because a lot has changed since 2015. But that's what I hear a lot. So from international students who come to our institution, or I see on open days, or I speak to parents at recruitment events overseas, the first thing they say is, oh, we had a nephew, or our cousin's son, and that's what we're going to do. And I was like, that's not an option anymore. A lot has changed since 2015. So you need to be working off the most recent information, which is readily available online. And UCAS break it down, a lot of the information, into accessible information that international students can understand. And in addition to that, there is the Home Office website, which is fun times. But that's a skill in itself to learn how to navigate that and get the updates. But it is recommended to do as much. And also, I mean, at many institutions, at my institution, we run visa sessions for students. So we get immigration solicitors to come on campus or to do webinars. So students can ask the questions of the specialists. And we run similar sessions for employers to educate employers as well about, the benefits of hiring international talent. So again, what is your institution, or what is the institution that you're looking to move to? What expertise have they got? What facilities have they got? Who are they working with? What support have they got available for you in your international career journey? And that will inform, again, your choices of where to go and what to study, but everything else.
Were you going to add, Rob?
Yeah, I think one of the really important points to point out here, and just to keep reiterating, really, is the amount of people and services that are available to students, but not just availability. I think as well, in any student space, sometimes it can be very difficult as staff in education related establishments, whether that be universities, colleges, charities like ourselves. It can be hard if students aren't coming to us, right? They're not coming to us. How do we break down that barrier? It's difficult to reach out sometimes, and especially when you're an international student, especially if English is not your first language. So first message really is to reiterate, do your best to reach out. That first time you do will break down that wall, we hope, and will progress you forward to feeling more confident with that in the future. But I think the flip side of that is also this reassurance and also encouragement that there are people like us that, even if we never see you, are constantly working with lots of different people, not even you as students, to try and make this experience easier. You know, we are constantly speaking to each other. We're constantly going to government. We're going to employers. You know, when we talk about employers and educating employers, the graduate route was a perfect example of that. It was a new route. It had developed from, historic old routes, and some employers didn't understand it. It was brand new. It was something that people hadn't seen in a long time. A lot of that education piece has been conducted through universities, through careers teams. So really, it's that encouragement. Again, you asked about parents. It's that reassurance that no matter what happens with your son or daughter, there are people working here in the sector constantly to support them no matter what happens. You know, if they don't want to feel comfortable coming to people yet, or they need time to reach out, that's fine. We will continue working for them as long as we can.
And that's a really nice point, actually. And I think to sort of round things off is the human level to this, because we got pretty down and dirty into the nitty gritty there.
Got to sometimes
of visas and things, but it's an amazing thing. I mean, I'm in awe of anyone that does it. It's a fascinating part of your life and time of your life. And how important would you say to, obviously do your research, do the hard work, take it seriously, but also enjoy these options, because there are so many of them and so many different pathways you can take.
Definitely. And university is a great time to look at different career paths and experience different things. If you're doing a degree in marketing, there's so many different careers you can go into for marketing. You can even have a portfolio career if that's what you want to do. So we're seeing students looking, and companies looking at students, bringing in their knowledge and expertise. And I think it's a great time as well to build up your experience from internships, placements. If you can get experience with companies in the country that you want to stay in, or even if you're going home and you just want to get overseas experience that you can bring home, it's a great time to do it is at university, because you're covered on your student visa to be able to do a placement as long as it's an assessed part of your program. Thank you.
For the benefit of the podcast listeners, Rob just gave Noeleen a nodding nod.
Yes, very good. Yes.
So as long as it's an assessed part of your program, whether it's a company project, an internship, or your a placement, you can work for various different employers in different contexts. Some institutions, it has to be directly linked to your program. Others, it can be loosely linked, and your interpretation of that. But it gives you an option to get experience. But also, if for the longer term you want to stay in the UK, you're building up your industry connections, your industry knowledge, your networks, and potentially working with your future employer. Because we have seen that international students who do gain work experience while studying, whether it's an assessed part of your program or they're covered full-time in summer on an internship, they can build that visibility with an employer. And sometimes that does lead to a skilled worker visa at the end, as long as they, again, successfully complete the program that they've signed up to do. Getting work experience, being able to experiment across different careers. We've seen accountancy and finance students come in and end up doing roles around business analytics, for instance. And they're like, oh, I thought I wanted to be an accountant, but actually, I want to be an analyst. That's what I want to do. So it does open up your eyes to opportunities that you might not have considered, especially if it wasn't something talked about at school, if it's not something that a member of your immediate family or extended family do. These careers then become more highlighted at university as options, but you have to engage with the process. And I think that's something that most universities will say, is that student engagement isn't where it used to be. We need students to engage with the process, engage with the employers coming on campus, come along to the events. And you're not just doing yourself a favor, but you're also raising the visibility of your institution, which impacts your career longer term, again, for the better.
Sure. Should we all have a lie down?
Yeah.
I felt like a lot through there, didn't
Although
it?
I really like talking about visas. I find it really exciting. I'm weird. I know. I find it really exciting.
As kind of an end point or a natural point to kind of conclude, going back to your point about the humanity of all of this, I think it can be very, very challenging coming to a country and studying full stop. Okay. I found it difficult going to university in my own country, 30 minutes from home, right? So the idea of going to another country and being hundreds of miles in a new language is very scary. And then on top of that, having to navigate the complexities of some of the things we've talked about in this session, and some of the challenges about finding work all in the space of maybe 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. It's not that much time. And I think it can start to feel, I've seen sometimes students start to get worn down by it, feel like it's a sort of transactional experience. The absolute best advice I think we can give is really try and lean into this as much as possible. Try and gain as much from your peers as possible, from your course as possible. Yes, employment absolutely is super important, but that won't happen unless you found the time to be who you need to be at university. Really lean into that experience, grow as a person as much as you possibly can, expose yourself to as many different things, cultures as you can. And actually, as a byproduct of that, you should find that this process becomes that little bit easier because you are a more well-rounded, developed person, and employers will see that. As international students, you hold a huge amount of credibility just by being here, but by developing and taking that time and investing in yourself, it will show to employers. And we totally accept the immigration system is another hurdle, but we're here for people and there's plenty of support out there to help them. But
and no doubt everyone is many students that you will have helped across the years will be very appreciative of that.
I hope so.
I think they will. Absolutely. So. No, good stuff. We covered a lot there, and thank you very much indeed to both of you, to Noeleen and to Rob. Of course, as we said, there is a lot there, so please break it down. Use the resources available, ucas.com/international. And of course, look after your brains as well, because there can be a lot going on. Don't forget to like and subscribe to this episode, and of course, all the other episodes available in the series as well. And we will speak soon.